Mr. President, as I watch this great deliberative body move toward a transportation bill, I sometimes feel as though I'm watching an impending train wreck or a car crash. Because on the issue of safety, this bill reflects a tragic, unfortunate, unforgivable, missed opportunity. If we authorize this transportation measure, which is vitally important to the future of our nation and will help drive economic growth and create jobs, we are missing the opportunity to make our roads and rails safer, more reliable, and more resilient for our economy and quality of life. We are missing an opportunity, in effect, to save lives. Anyone who has opened the morning newspaper and read about a derailment, whether in Bridgeport or Spuyten Duyvil in the Bronx, New York, or Philadelphia, causing injuries, deaths, loss of both life and property, can ask, understandably, why can't they do something? Anybody who discovers a used car bought by a friend or relative or oneself rife with recalls and the need for repairs can justifiably ask, why can't they do something? And anybody who has a near miss on the highway with an 80,000-pound truck going 75 miles an hour because there is a tired truck driver under pressure from an owner, or because there are two 33 length rigs, can justifiably ask, why haven't they done something? And the answer is because the Senate is missing an opportunity now, this year, on this bill. I spent a lot of time driving Connecticut's roads and seeing firsthand how all of these vital forms of transportation, railroad, bridges, ports, and airports, are in need of investment. The latest example and evidence is from a report released today. It's called the TRIP Report in New Haven, finding 45% of roads there are in poor condition, and the cost to drivers are $707 a year in repairs. That's real money. Those roads are really in bad condition, 45% of them in the New Haven area alone. And the TRIP report ought to be a powerful reminder of the need for robust and enduring investment. I wrote to the writers and drafters of the bill before us asking for a good bill that makes the kind of investment we need to respond to the needs that are reflected in the TRIP report, which is in the range of billions of dollars a year, but this measure provides to Connecticut only about $500 million a year, a pittance compared to what the need is in Connecticut, according to the American Society for Civil Engineers and the Federal Highway Administration. Keeping roads and rail reliable and safe means investment. Creating jobs means investment. Driving the economy forward means investment. All of those goals can be served by a robust and adequate investment. I urge that the bill cover the full 6 years. Instead, this bill really is a mirage of what is necessary. The bill before us fails to provide a long-term and robust plan to meet priorities for our nation's transportation infrastructure. Major construction projects like building the I-84 Route 18 highway interchange in Waterbury, known as the Mixmaster, and replacing the Etna Viaduct, portions of I-84 in Hartford, will take years to complete. This bill provides only the illusion of a long-term authorization, backed only by 3 years of dedicated funding for highways, and no, let me repeat, no dedicated funding for the critical infrastructure investments in our nation's commuter railroads. As the American people discover what's in this bill, they're going to say again, why can't they do something? Why can't they do something better than this train wreck and car collision of a bill? I voted against the motion to proceed because of its failure to provide a path forward. This bill's failure to provide a reliable funding source for the commuter rail systems that millions of Americans depend on every day, and its failure to address our country's ongoing crisis in transportation safety. We've seen the evidence of safety failure in a variety of tragic instances: Philadelphia, Westchester County, where a collision grade at a grade crossing in Westchester County killed 6 people, a derailment in the Bronx that killed 4, train on the wrong track striking and killing a worker in New Haven, and of course the derailment in Bridgeport that injured more than 70 people. Positive train control would help prevent these kinds of tragedies. It's a technology similar to GPS, not much more complicated, that monitors track conditions and speeds of trains and helps trains slow or stop before there is a collision or derailment. It's not a new or novel or original, untested technology. It's something that has been around for years. This bill fails to bring our railroads into the latest 20th century technology, not to mention the 21st century technology that positive train control offers. The Northeast Corridor is in urgent need of at least $570 million per year to enable a decent and adequate state of repair, to give railroads a realistic chance of implementing life-saving positive train control technology, and to improve safety at rail grade crossing. That's money that can't be created by a mirage or an illusion in a bill like this one. The National Infrastructure Safety and Investment Grants Program was designed to provide this level of support. If Congress were to dedicate the necessary funding from the Highway Trust Fund, it could be done. But Congress is ignoring this fundamental need. On our roads, American bus and truck drivers perform an essential service. They work hard at it, but their industry also has well-documented safety issues. Unfortunately, this legislation creates additional hurdles for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration to promulgate rules and address critical safety issues. Rather than making the roads safer, it actually enables more dangers. The bill before us allows 18-year-olds to sit behind the wheel of an 80,000-pound truck going 75 miles an hour with no requirement to get rest, to drive 75 miles an hour not only within the state but across state lines. It allows giant twin 33s, new to our roads, to drive across state lines, putting drivers at risk and further degrading our highway system. And the bill eviscerates federal rules on how much rest truck drivers must take. That rest is essential to safety. I sought to strike and modify these damaging provisions in committee, and I urged my colleagues to support essential safety reforms, but unfortunately, those calls went unheeded. Over the last 2 years, the Commerce Committee has had a tragic front row seat, a unique insight to the tragedies that pile up when safety is ignored. Our national safety regulations all too commonly look the other way when auto companies, for example, conceal information to protect profits over human life. I appreciate the work of Senator Boxer, who stripped most of the worst and most offensive provisions out of the title governing the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. That title no longer limits grants for prevention of drunk driving, for example. It still contains, unfortunately, unacceptable loopholes. Due to the GM ignition cover-up and the Takata airbag crisis, there are currently an unprecedented 64 million cars on the road today under safety recall. Let me repeat that number, 64 million cars on the road today under recall. That's 25% of the total 250 million cars in America. And to say this number is unprecedented fails to do it justice. Along with a number of my colleagues, particularly Senator Markey, I've advocated numerous policy changes to ensure accountability for these problems and make them less likely in the future, not just punish, but protect. And I'd like to focus on two that are particularly urgent. First, many of the cars that have been recalled are 10 or more years old and in the hands of second or third owners. There needs to be a provision that says to used car dealers, they have an obligation when a car is under recall to notify a new owner and, in fact, to repair the car. Second, as we've learned in the case of GM, federal prosecutors simply lack legal tools to file criminal charges against companies for knowingly concealing information about defects that can kill. Deliberate cover-up and concealment of deadly defects should be punishable criminally, as it is in other industries where the stakes are similar. We know that employees at GM were aware of dangerous safety defects but chose to remain silent or, in fact, mislead authorities, leading to hundreds of injuries and deaths. This measure and the DRIVE Act do nothing to hold manufacturers or their corporate officers criminally responsible when they knowingly fail to disclose those risks. And even after the defects are discovered, NHTSA lacks the teeth to ensure that wrongdoing is not repeated. Their civil penalty authority for safety violations is currently capped at $35 million. The DRIVE Act leaves these fines at just a pittance compared to the revenue of GM, less than the cost of doing business. Safety fines need to be meaningful rather than a pittance, less than the cost of doing business. Congress must remove this cap and ensure that safety penalties provide a meaningful deterrent to wrongdoing. Even at $70 million, it is a pittance compared to GM, which made $156 billion in 2014. Americans deserve better than another 6 years of these crashes, bridge collapse, supposed accidents, which are preventable, and that they need protection to stop. I hope that my colleagues will join with me to implement reforms now and take strong steps to build and maintain a transportation system worthy of the greatest, strongest country in the history of the world. For our economy, we can create jobs. For our quality of life, we can ensure quality and convenience. For our safety, we can prevent crashes. We can do better with a transportation company with a transportation system that keeps people safe. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.